Welcome.
Hi, guys.
And Mayank, welcome back.
Thank you, Chip. Welcome, David. I'm so excited to have you here and doing this session with you. I'll start by introducing you to everyone. David is Vice President and General Manager of the Worldwide Ecosystem team at HPE. He's had a tremendous impact over his last 7 years with HPE and helped reshaping their alliances partnering organization into a worldwide ecosystem team. Prior to HPE, David trained for partnerships and being a leader in partnerships by serving impactful leadership roles, including 7 years as a principal consultant with McKinsey and 7 years as a nuclear submarine officer in the US Navy. So, David has been trained for being a partner leader and is such a serious, no-nonsense professional and leader that it's been tremendous working with him over the past 2-3 years and getting to know him. And I'm excited to have him on this session and talking to you, David. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Really excited to be here and honored to be here as well.
So David, I had said I'll use many words to describe you because I'm so impressed with your achievements and the way you think. And then you stumped me by saying you could summarize your life in 6 words. What were they, David?
Yeah, early in my career, there's a guy who wrote a book. I think there's something around memoirs, and he went around interviewing people. And I had to do an exercise in one of my past companies as to how can you summarize your entire life or career in 6 words, and no more, no less. And so I thought really hard about it, and I came up with I can't believe I'm still underwater. And as you mentioned, Mayank, it starts with being on a submarine and was literally underwater. I spent a year of my life underwater, literally an entire year. And then every job that I think I've had after the Navy, I honestly feel like I've been underwater. And no more so than now, right? With ecosystems, as Jay talks about the new decade and everything. And I was kind of chuckling before because you guys, there's a lot of comments in the questions about David versus Goliath, and my name's David, but it is I'm new to this, and I feel like the ecosystem is Goliath and everything. And so no matter what I've ever been thrown into, managing ecosystems are extremely hard, and so I feel like I'm always underwater.
So David, you've had an amazing ringside seat at HPE as a watcher and a participator in defining the strategy at HPE on how you would engage with the ecosystem with tech partners and services alliance and a variety of partners, but also more recently as Green Lake has taken shape, which is a tremendously fresh look at how you go to market at HPE. So this must have translated into several insights and learnings. I'm really eager to go through it with you. And I have been working with you over the past couple of years, and over the last year, you've helped shape a very insightful framework on how to approach partnering in the ecosystem. Let's start by saying what did you observe? Why did you make the change on calling your own team ecosystems and then defining a formal framework of how to partner?
Yeah, no, great question. So look, within every company, as I mentioned, how you measure, how you incent partners is always complicated. And when I took over the team about 3-4 years ago, I wanted things to be different. And a lot of things you read when you want to change things up is to change your name, right? So I changed my name of the group from Alliances to Ecosystem for one main reason, like I said, was really around, having people say, "Ooh, what is that? Is it different?" and how it goes. But secondly, and Jay hit on it as well, but I hadn't even seen Jay's, words and stuff. But I think a couple of years ago when I did this, the Drucker Forum met on ecosystems. I saw Bain and McKinsey, BCG all producing articles. And I've even heard people say, hey, you go back 10, 15 years ago, everybody was talking about the cloud, but nobody really knew what it was. And that's where we are today with ecosystems. Everybody's talking about it. Most people know it's important, but how is it really going to shape and transform everything still needs to be determined. And so that is still morphing. And so I morphed the group. We called ourselves ecosystem sales now instead of alliances. And for that exact reason, to capitalize on the next decade or the next era, as well as trying to get people to think differently. And so with that, The reason I, come from a consulting background, and putting structure to a problem is usually the first way you go about it. And as I started addressing some of the challenges that we were facing as a company, and as you mentioned, we're making a massive pivot, right? As Jay rightfully said, we started this trend 4 or 5 years ago. We declared everything was going to be as a service, and now everybody is following us. And I think imitation, is the best form of flattery, right? When everybody else is copying what we're doing. And so we knew we needed to do things differently. And we didn't have a framework. We were all addressing different pieces, different parts. And we sometimes end up as a company talking past each other. You'll say, hey, you've got the wrong partner types over there, and you've got the wrong offers. And I keep saying, yeah, they're right and they're wrong, right? And without a structured framework, you just talk past each other. And so everybody doesn't really know how to decompose it. And every element that you'll see here in the framework, it has a neat element to it that when you break it down and then try to put it all together, it goes here. And so what the framework really is Chip and the team are showing, it's really 6 parts enabled by a digital process and workflow, which is obviously the reason I'm here, is because of WorkSpan's ability to digitize what we want to do. But our 6-part framework really starts first with the strategy and the partner plan. And what are we trying to achieve? Why are we partnering? What's a win for HPE? What's a win for our partner? And how do we make something better for our customer? And not every partner type and every strategy is very strategic. Some of them are more tactical and some are the most echelon. And so we start first with what are we really trying to achieve strategically? So that's the first piece. Then within it, as we all mentioned, there's multiple partner types and the lines are blurring. We'll talk about that later. But you really need to understand what partner type are we? We're a hardware provider today, but we're moving into the as a service business. And so we're morphing. But when we deal with systems integrators, we deal with colos, we deal with VARs, they all need to be treated differently. And so you first have to really make sure you're talking about the right partner type. And then you have to talk about the right offering. And the offerings can vary, and I'll talk a little bit more about this as well, but what you sell with different partners could be everything as simple as a reference architecture to something more complex. And then the 4th element is around measurement, and measuring ecosystems are ridiculously hard. I've taught you, as Carl's mentioned it, you got to put numbers to it. And there's hard metrics, there's soft metrics, there's overlay metrics, and it's just not easy. And there's 50 shades of gray when you start to measure some of the different pieces. And then incentives. In my opinion, people mix up incentives because if you're talking to a salesperson, they care about how they get paid. If you're talking to a company, they care about how they make money, and sometimes they're not 100% aligned. And without that, you end up talking past each other. And then once you get this right, you got the strategy, you've now figured out what partner type, what offer you're actually selling, and the margin profile associated with it. How are you going to measure? How are you going to incent? And how do you go to market? And everything you need to do to put create demand gen and do the business development funds and everything that is all there. And again, all of this could exist, but it doesn't exist with scale in mind. And we've been partnered with WorkSpan for the last 2 to 3 years now to build this framework into WorkSpan that digitally enables both the process and the workflow that makes it so much easier to partner with multiple parties in the market.
David, this structure is very interesting. When I looked at it several months ago, when you shared it with us, what stood out first was the simplicity, but also how key influencing on the execution each of these 6 boxes are. I think traditionally a lot of people have done strategy and partner planning and then immediately jumped into GTM activities. But you notice that the ecosystem world is evolving, and that's why you put in these 4 boxes in the middle to right size and right align everybody. So could we spend some time digging into why is partner type on this framework, and what do you intend to do with that box in your
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think Carl before me stole a lot of my thunder, but if you flip to the next slide, every partner type out there is morphing. And what you may be traditional, I've got up here the typical traditional types that people play in today, your ISVs, your OEMs, your colos, your systems integrators. And as Carl rightfully so, the lines are blurring. Everybody is moving from one side to another. And so we're putting in a whole new partner program that really simplifies them into the activities in which partners do. And partners either help us build solutions, they either help us sell solutions, or they help us service them. And so these three buckets are how we're aligning our internal partner program to be more aligned. And even in those, we have many partners that are just one. They may be an ISV that's helping us only to build a solution, but many of our partner types fall across all build, sell, and service type of ones. And so in my opinion, the lines are blurring. Colos are becoming service providers, right? And, VARs are moving into becoming systems integrators. And you got even distributors who are moving up and down the stack and buying companies left and right. And obviously coming from a hardware centric company of the past, we're clearly moving into multiple different directions and stuff. So I think this is really important, and understanding what's the partner type, because as you have an offer, let's say HPE, we're moving towards GreenLake, and in our GreenLake includes a lot of services. And in the past, as we talk about traditional resell, and for those who know a lot about HPE, 70% of our business is sold in the old traditional resell model and through distributors and VARs. And we now have a complete offering that, as Jay said, you start with $1 million server that's now $9,000 a month. And how do you monetize that? And a lot of times it was for the services that they were putting on top of it that we're now starting to compete with. And so each offer that we're developing, we have to figure out, what is HPE trying to drive? Where do we need partners that need to supplement and surround us? And then where are there still partners today that don't want to be in that business and just want to traditionally resell what we've got? And so you have to, for each offer, get very precise. And I'll share an example towards the end here. And then with that partner type, the incentives are different, the measurements are different, what you're actually selling could vary, but the lines are clearly merging. And I think I always ask people, what partner type are you? And what partner type do you partner with? And what's changing? And from everyone I've spoken to and what I've heard on this call before is everything is changing.
So the interesting thing is, Jay and Carl both referenced it, that partner times are changing, and therefore ecosystem engagements have to change with it. Yeah. So in your framework, you have put a box right there and said, where is my partner wanting to go? And where am I wanting to go? And let's have a discussion around what our plan is around changing partner times, right? You're making it an explicit part of the discussion, as opposed to a thing that is happening on the side while you're focused on a single track lane.
That's right. And what I've learned is there's no one size fits all. And again, as I talk to people within our company, we use generalities. Oh, we have the wrong partner types. Well, we have the right partner types for the certain type of offer. And so what this framework allows me to do and our company to do is be very surgical for a particular workload. Let's take VDI as a service, let's say. And we are providing that today. And we, in many cases, many of our partners provide VDI. And so we are now building with that partner strategy around, say, VDI as a service. We're building what's our partner strategy. And it really has two modes. Mode one is us just providing infrastructure to other companies who are providing VDI as a service. And how can we make that more efficient? How can we move them to GreenLake? How can we make it easier for them to consume? And then we need a different set of partner types when HPE is leading with our own IP, our own solution, our own VDI stack. That in reality becomes this world of co-opetition. And so what this framework allows us to do is get, again, very surgical, but for each offer, you need a different partner type. But even within the offer, say for that example of VDI, what's HPE's role? And for part of our partners, it's just to provide infrastructure, and part of it is to provide the end-to-end solution. And you can imagine the partner types that we compete with in the two different options, they vary. And so you have to be pretty surgical across the board.
David, let's pull on this thread of offer types a little bit more, right? So you were saying HPE is putting together a variety of offer types, but implicitly you're also encouraging in the discussion to create offer types where partners will play a role inside that offer, right? And you're creating space for them. So that becomes part of your framework. So shall we? Could you share what kind of discussions and planning happens around offer types?
Yeah, absolutely. So Chip, if you go to the next slide. So look, I like to use a really simple analogy. This is really, really simple, right? But let's start with raw ingredients. Let's think of kits and let's think of outcomes. In the past, HPE has been selling raw ingredients. We sell compute, storage, networking, and we have sold it to partners who have then taken those parts and have built, let's say, an outcome, a car. And we've been selling to systems integrators for many, many years. We sell to end customers and they put it together. And in the end of the day, we're just selling raw ingredients. What GreenLake really is, in my opinion, is we take those raw ingredients, we pre-assemble them, and we build them as a kit, and we put services and we put IP in it together. And we're now moving from selling raw ingredients to selling kits. And our hope is that our partners of the future will take those kits and buy them to help develop the outcome. And it's obviously the kits, when you go into a Lego store, you can buy the piece parts, red, yellow, green, but the kits are always more expensive, right? Because there's customized pieces, different colors, you have the instructions and everything. And Lego obviously makes more money selling kits than they do making the raw ingredients, right? And so that's what we're trying to do. And so the reason this is important to me is, if I now bring it back, on the left side of what we're selling and the offering type could be as simple as a reference architecture. And we do a ton of partnering with so many companies today that certify, their software to run on our hardware, and that's reference architecture. Now, is that any kind of unique differentiation in the market? No, we just certify we work together. But as we move forward, we're working very, very closely with some of our most top partners, SAP, for example, with Carl on the phone. We have an amazing HEC Rise edition. That's the customer data center version that gives a customer an alternative to public cloud, but still enables SAP to provide a cloud-like experience for their customer. We're providing a kit to SAP. We're selling GreenLake, a complete infrastructure as a service, scales up, scales down, and we're selling that to SAP. Then SAP is taking it and selling the outcome. Much different than just selling the raw ingredients. And again, the reason this is really important is tie it with the partner type, tie it with the incentives, tie it with the economics. Obviously we make more money selling kits, right? It's the reason everybody does it. There's services in it, there's IP in it. But not everybody wants to buy the kit, because we've trained so many of our partners today to continue to buy the raw ingredients. And so as we start to think of incentives, our ability to pay more rebates for reselling kits will be much higher than selling the raw ingredients. Right. And again, that's why we put a partner program in when we started GreenLake, and it was kind of, one size fits all at the beginning, but we're seeing that, whoa, boy, if you bring us the deal, that's a lot more valuable than fulfilling a deal, because, how does the economics work? And, every element that goes with it. So as you think about what's the strategy, we already talked about the partner type. But what are you actually selling is really important. And we have many, many motions with many partners. Again, VDI is an example. We'll sell those raw ingredients to a customer, like Wipro is a great example. They have an industry leading Virtua Desk solution that we partner very closely with to sell workspace solutions, for them. And in that case, we're selling, raw ingredients. But we have our own VDI stack, and we have different partner types that are helping us sell it. And a lot of them are more down market, and we're even competing in some of our top accounts as a result of it. And so, but this framework enables us to pick what are we selling with what partner. And then as you go further into the pieces, how do you actually incent and drive the right behavior?
So one more thing that you were hinting at is the economics should work out, right? And for the economics to work out, are the measurements and metrics, right? And this is a question that we get many times we go into a conversation. I know it is important, but I don't know how to measure it.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about the metrics you have found useful and how you suggest.
Yeah. So my biggest trick here, and the part of the framework, again, just like the framework put structure, I call it bifurcation. And not everything you do with any partner can be measured the same. And for most of our partners, we have primarily in the past 3 selling motions. We either sell to the partner who then uses it to provide to an end customer. So I call that the service provider model. Many of our partners are resellers. So they just take our products, resell it, make the margin on the transaction, add their own value-added services. And then we have this world of co-sell, sell with, however you guys want to call it. And that's where you see all 50 shades of gray, and every company has issues with it, and be interested to see if Jay's got best practices. But as I talk to every company, sometimes measurement of ecosystem sell with business as an overlay is a 4-letter word in many companies, because it's sometimes you could tag a $50 million deal that was maybe influenced because of a phone call, or maybe there was real work, and how do you put the value on it? And so what I've always done is I've been trying to assess the value of the partnership is I bifurcate. We've got one ISV, I'll leave the name out, but we do $1 billion with them. And if you run around telling everybody, hey, we do $1 billion with this partner, people scratch their head and they don't really believe it. And so what I do is I bifurcate it and I say, okay, well, let's bifurcate that billion. We resell, say, 300 million of software. And on that software, we get a reseller component. And then about 400 million of the business is actually attached when they buy the software. So you could attribute that hardware 100% to the buying of the software. But then we have another 300-400 million bought every year that the software is not attached, but we see a keyword in our CRM system that would make you believe it's tied to that vendor. And so it all adds up to $1 billion. And when you tell people just $1 billion, they don't believe it. But when you say it's 300 million of bucket A, 400 million of bucket 2, and 300 million of bucket 3 adds up to $1 billion, you get credible. And so to me, it's all about bifurcating the measurement and getting it down to its lowest level of components. And then in the sell with business, we are now putting it's probably 50 shades of gray, but we're putting 3 pretty distinct separate things that we can kind of bifurcate into 3 simple buckets. The first is the deal would have never happened without the partner. It's obviously the one we want the most of. It happens the least of what we've got today, but that's where we want to drive the behavior. We want the partner bringing us the business. The other end of the spectrum is what I call validate or endorse. And we're working on a deal. A partner comes in and says, yep, great deal. It works. We've seen it. It validates it. There's definitely influence there, not as valuable as bringing us something net new, but there's a value to endorsing that solution. And then in the middle is what I call collaborate. We're going after something together, and there's clearly effort on both sides. And so we're trying to put everything we do with our partners into those 3 buckets where they're either validating, they're either bringing it, or we're collaborating it together. And again, we can still sell to the customer direct or to our partner direct, or they could resell, but we bifurcate all of that and try to break it down into its lowest common denominator.
So David, can you give us an anecdote of how all these pieces come together?
Yeah. So Chip, go to the next slide. So here's why I think the framework, I've really dumbed this down for simplicity here, but it's a real example. We have a great partnership with Accenture. We've worked on it for 3-4 years now with them, and we call it Accenture Hybrid Cloud. So in this particular case, the partner type, HPE, is partnering with a systems integrator like Accenture, and their economics are different, but in many cases, the motions are different. The offering is Accenture Hybrid Cloud. It's a very engineered solution we worked on together, highly automated, has some really neat IP associated with it. And so it's the systems integrator, it's the offering type, which I've already covered, and it's at the top. Now what I've done at the bottom is, in the middle section, if you will, is I bifurcated the measurement in the buckets I talked about before. We either sell to, we resale, and we've dumbed down this version to be co-sell to the 2 extremes, right? Where you either originate the opportunity or you collaborate on the pursuit. And I now bifurcate incentives the same way I did measurements, where I'm thinking about how do I pay our people? How does my partner pay their people? But how do each company make money? And they're quite different, right? So when we set up Accenture Hybrid Cloud, it was really a sell to Accenture. They were going to sell the end customer. And so you see the more check marks on the right here, that if we do that, it's a win for us because that's how we designed it. It's a win for our partner. Now, when they go and resell it, which really isn't the business of how we're partnering with Accenture, but we're all winning here, but it's not as much as what we were driving before. But where you see the biggest difference is on the co-sell side. Whereas if Accenture is bringing us something net new, they're originating an opportunity, really powerful to us because it's net new, incremental revenue that we wouldn't have got on our own, and obviously value to Accenture because they're selling more of what they've got. And when we're collaborating, obviously less valuable than them bringing it in, to the perspective that we've got there. And then what we do is we tie it together with what do we need to be able to do to action this? And you've got to have deal registration and WorkSpan, generate reports and all of that kind of stuff. So this is an example of what we're trying to do. We take the framework of the 6 components. Once you've got the strategy, you then say, okay, how do I enable this? I've got a partner type, I've got an offering. How do I measure? How do I incent? How do I action it? And that's really the go-to-market to create the demand. And then most importantly, at the end, we've got all of this up and running in WorkSpan that can house our strategy documents and what we're trying to do. It's got the partner types clearly defined. It's got the offering, and WorkSpan has the modules of developing the offer together and keeping things on track. It's got all the elements and how we measure. It's got the incentives on compensation and how we, companies make money and such. And then it's all a digitally enabled platform that enables us to action it.
This is really clarifying this anecdote of how it comes together, and then you can, of course, incentivize the right kind of portion of the pipeline, right? So with that, I know this is useful to many, many attendees. Why don't we transition directly to questions? Chip, do we want to take a couple of questions?
Sure. Yeah, David. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that framework and your experience at HPE, really transforming the organization and how you're working with partners. So let's see, a couple of questions. We have a question here from Michaelia Negri, who says, "How do you reconcile being surgical with achieving velocity in the ecosystem?"
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. So look, we're still a big company, just like SAP and everything else, right? We're 30 billion in revenue, 60,000 people globally, and they all do a lot of this stuff today. Where we're trying to be surgical or on a really big bet, and we're making some very strategic plays where we will really want to drive GreenLake to the next level. And with those, that's where we're creating the surgical element, and we'll be able to be precise and use the volume because we're setting it all up on WorkSpan. So we're pretty confident that even though we're being incredibly surgical, having a digital platform that will enable us to scale no matter how much we've got there. And then we're taking elements of this framework and trying to apply it. I mean, as I mentioned, 3 years ago, we launched a partner program that gave a pretty nice rebate for any of our partners that sold our GreenLake deals and early on. And we've now got so many partners out doing that and stuff, but then we've started to recognize the economics don't always work, right? And and a lot of times we'll create the demand ourselves, and then the customer will say, I want it, but then they want to buy through a channel partner. So then they fulfill through a channel partner. And then the channel partner wants the same rebate and incentive that we had assigned before. And so we're starting to bifurcate this and using it like, hey, if you originate the new opportunity, that plus maybe even more margin is available to you to resell in that case. But if you're just a fulfillment arm where we created the demand, then that's not where we want. Well, certainly you're involved and you need to be paid for your services for that, but it won't be as margin rich as bringing something net new. And so it is a delicate balance, but we're primarily providing the surgical elements of it today on our big bets, and then using the digital platform of WorkSpan to enable it so we don't have the scale issues that I think you're trying to address there.
Great. Maybe one more question. This was sort of a question and conversation taking place in the chat between Roland Fluke Bilbo and Maria Shan. Hi, Maria. Asking about sort of partner types. When we talk about partner types, is it really routes to market? As partners are more hybrid and embracing multiple routes to market.
Yeah.
And then I think Maria sort of chimed in and said, maybe it's really about business models. So I think that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and I don't have the perfect answer. I just know that what Jay and others said, we have historical ways of looking at partner types, right? In the silos, ISVs, managed service providers, colos, systems integrators. And that, I think, to the question, has to all be blown up. And again, what HPE is doing in our new partner program is putting things in buckets and around building new solutions that we work on together, helping sell those joint solutions, and then servicing them. And the servicing ones, as I mentioned, sometimes HPE is going to service them under our own GreenLake, and sometimes we're going to allow partners to do it, or they're going to add on top. And so, Jay and others probably have it, but my main point is it is everything from a business model discussion to a route to market to discussion to today, many of our partners don't want to be in the same box anymore, right? And the ISVs are becoming, cloud providers, and they want to provide the platform themselves, or sometimes they want to stay agnostic. And so to me, it's less about putting somebody in a box. It's about developing the right strategy, and then what is it the role of that particular partner type that could morph, but how do they make money? And I see many companies, at least from the years that I've been in this, is they know what is a win for their company. And within HPE, I know what a win is for us. I see a lot of people trying to partner, but not willing to put themselves in their head to say, what's a win for that partner? And why do they want this? And what do they get out of it? And that to me is the most important element that then defines the partner type. And maybe the partner type isn't clear, it isn't so black and white anymore, but at least we understand, why do they want it? Why do we want it? How does the customer get a better outcome? And what do we do together to drive that outcome? So again, it's a framework. It works for us. And what my recommendation to everybody is bifurcate, right? Break down the different pieces, and whether you want to call this section route to market, or you want to call measurements something else, just try to break it down to its components. And for us, because we're still in that legacy mode, we still have a lot of business going through the legacy resale business. And as we're morphing to change, I think we all just need to be adaptive and understand the dynamics happening with every partner type.
Awesome.
David,
Fantastic.
Every time I'm in a conversation with you, I walk away with 3 more points connecting the dots in my head. I think that's a testament to you combining your principal role at McKinsey with this straightforward execution point of view of a US Navy nuclear submarine officer.
That's it. Yeah.
Thank you for this conversation, David.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm very glad. Anyone has any questions, please let me know. I think there's no industry standard, but Jay, maybe there's a way to get an industry standard around how to manage ecosystems. And one last plug here for WorkSpan is they've enabled my framework, and they're a great partner. And I think to your point, Mayank, I actually, to your credit, and Amit and others and Chip, is as I've developed this, I've been able to iterate with you guys. And so even though you're a platform company, you're also a group of experts that wake up every day, just like Jay and Carl, that sit around and talk about ecosystems. And so you guys have actually helped advance my framework a lot further and more crisp around where it needs to be. So I encourage all of you guys to think of WorkSpan as a great platform that enables your process, but there's some amazing people within WorkSpan that are really able to help push the business thinking, which is really important, because if the business thinking isn't right, no platform is going to solve your problem.
Thank you, David, and I'm
Thank you,
humbled by your call out.